Chapter 10, Brushstrokes. The studio, a converted loft space near campus, pulsed with a restless energy. It was my haven, my battlefield, my confessional. Today it felt like all three, amplified. The colossal unfinished sculpture loomed a skeletal giant of metal and wood, both a challenge and a mirror to my own internal struggle. Late afternoon sunlight filtered through the towering windows, painted the loft in shades of gold and amber, but couldn't dispel the knot of anticipation tightening in my chest. The air itself felt charged, thick with a nervous electricity. I'd spent the morning in a futile attempt at tidying, trying to impose order on the creative chaos that was my natural habitat. A pointless exercise. My studio was an extension of my soul, and right now my soul was anything but tidy. I tried to take a deep, steadying breath. Polo, his name reverberated in my mind, a persistent low thrum beneath the surface of my thoughts. His visits, his calculated restraint, the almost touches they'd disrupted the carefully calibrated equilibrium of my life. He'd been surprisingly respectful, in that possessive way of his. The near kisses, the charged silences, the lingering gazes, a slow burn, all the more potent for its control. And the earrings, the delicate silver thorns and leaves, a constant cool pressure against my skin, a reminder. But the memory of his presence, of his nearness in the shadowed woods, that was a wildfire. A raw, untamed energy that hadn't been extinguished, only stoked. I tried to work, to immerse myself in the familiar solace of creation, but the metal remained stubbornly cold. The sketches lifeless. My mind was a traitor, replaying every encounter with Polo, the searing intensity of his eyes, the ghost of a smile playing on his lips, the way he moved with such a confident grace. I flung my tools down, a frustrated groan escaping my lips. I needed release, a diversion, something. My gaze landed on a large blank canvas propped against the wall. An impulse, both reckless and exhilarating, seized me. I grabbed a tube of paint crimson, the color of passion, of life, of the roses he'd brought. The memory of him tucking a stray curl behind my ear, a simple gesture that sent shivers down my spine, resurfaced. I closed my eyes, letting the memories wash over me. Polo's presence, his gaze, the electric charge between us. The way he looked at me, not just with interest, but with a possessiveness that both thrilled and terrified me. Heat bloomed in my cheeks, spreading down my neck. I paced the studio, restless energy built. The need to create, to express, to somehow capture the whirlwind of emotions he'd unleashed within me became overwhelming. My gaze returned to the blank canvas. An idea, audacious and liberating, took root. I squeezed a generous amount of crimson paint onto my palette, the color of vibrant contrast to the muted tones of the studio. Then I began to paint. Not a self-portrait. Not directly, but a painting of the feeling, of the energy, of the chaotic, beautiful, terrifying connection that had sprung up between us. I used bold strokes, sweeping gestures, letting the paint flow, letting my emotions dictate the movement of my hand. I worked with a frenzied energy, lost in the process, the physical act of creation, a powerful catharsis. The studio filled with the sounds of my movements, the scrape of the palette knife against the canvas, my sharp intakes of breath, the rhythmic beat of my own heart. I built up layers of color, texture, creating a swirling vortex of crimson, ochre, and hints of deep blue, the color of his eyes. It wasn't a literal representation of anything. It was an emotional landscape, a visual manifestation of the tempest raging within me. Finally, spent but strangely energized, I stepped back, chest heaving, my hands and arms smeared with paint. The canvas was a maelstrom of color and texture, a raw, uninhibited expression of my inner state. It was wild, untamed, and undeniably powerful. I stared at the painting, at this abstract embodiment of my own turbulent emotions, and a slow, knowing smile curved my lips. This wasn't just a release, it was a prelude, a preparation. I was no longer simply reacting to Polo, I was actively shaping the narrative, setting the stage for our next encounter, on my terms, in my space. The canvas was a map of my inner world, and he was the uncharted territory. I was ready to explore, more than ready. I was going to chart my own course.